What's up, everyone? Welcome to the show. So tonight's show is going to be so freaking fun. I'm so excited to do this show or to do tonight's show. Pardon me. So hope everybody's doing well. Sorry, I just got kind of a little choked up. It's been a little while since I've had a guest on. So, you know, just getting through all the cobwebs because all I do is, stream ghost box sessions, things like that. So, this is a little different now. So, anyway, yeah, I'm doing good. How are you, Janice, Amy, Karen, Buffy? So, anyway, without further ado, I'm going to introduce our guest because we have a lot to talk about. Yeah, that's exactly right, Buffy. So, let me introduce Kirsten. She's a good friend of mine, fellow investigator from Paranormal Housewives. She's been on a few TV shows. So, yeah, so excited. But let me introduce Kirsten and bring her in. What's up, Kirsten?
Hello, hello. I'm happy to be here.
So, how does it feel to be home? Well, I can't even say if you call this home anymore.
I am so confused about where home is at this point. I think it's all home and it's always very interesting. I'm having like culture shock. I'm trying to get readjusted.
Right.
I got back from Granada a month and a half ago and I've been splitting my time. So 3 months there, 3 months here, 3 months there, 3 months here. It's a
Right.
little crazy.
That is crazy. So, yeah, Kirsten's originally from here and she moved to Spain. You got a job there teaching?
No, no. The story is weird. Of course, it has to be right.
It,
Um,
well, with us, yeah. What is it?
yeah.
Right.
Basically, what happened is that I grew up part time in Spain. I spent years in Seville, Madrid, right, and then when the pandemic hit, I went online because I'm a Spanish teacher, Spanish professor. We went online obviously for the pandemic, and I've stayed online. And so I figured, okay, as long as I'm teaching remotely, I could probably go anywhere I want.
Right.
And that's what we did. I
Nice.
just, yeah. So, and it's going to end at some point. At some point, they're going to reel me back, you know, kicking and screaming. But
Right. How's Ty like it?
oh, he loves it. He loves it. His Spanish is so adorable. We learned how to knit. We have tons of friends. I want to investigate there so badly because the place is the most haunted city in the world. I say that absolutely knowing that that is the most haunted city in the world. I just don't know how to get past the Catholic Church.
Right.
They're not thrilled about me wanting to do these things on historic properties, but I'm working on it.
Nice. Yeah, we'll all have to come out. A few of us would go out there in a
Oh,
heartbeat.
I would love it. I would love it. So yes.
That'd be so much fun. But yeah, it was kind of interesting how I brought Kirsten on. Kirsten and I have known each other for God, I don't know how many years. It's been a while,
A long time. 2000, I think 2007 or 8.
somewhere around there.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so Kirsten has a blog, and I came across one of her postings, and I read it, and it talks about some things that I was talking about to several other people, and just things that we have experienced. And then I was kind of giving my theory on it. Like when we see an apparition, when we hear a disembodied voice, or we even hear multiple disembodied voices, things thrown, things like that. And it's like, okay, wait, what's causing this? So I read an article that Kirsten wrote, and she was talking about the same thing, and I was like, holy crap. But it makes sense because there's so many of us that do this, and we've kind of in our circle of friends, we've come across this. Um, and it's funny how three of us talked about it, not even knowing. Kirsten wrote about it. Somebody else drew a comic strip on it, and we kind of combined notes, and we're like, "Holy crap! Why didn't we ever talk about this in the past?" It's weird.
I have some theories about why we didn't. I mean, okay, so we've inherited this whole kind of Christian tradition where you've got the body, the soul, and the spirit. And, the idea classically had always been that you inhabit this body and then you move on to an afterlife, and your spirit hangs around in a building somewhere to be contacted by a paranormal investigator. So we inherited this paradigm where the investigator should be able to reach the spirit, the disembodied spirit of someone who's passed on. And that became like our model for investigating, right? We're going to contact the spirit of so and so from the present moment, right? And we're going to bring them in from the past, and they're going to communicate with us through our devices as ghosts, as spirits. I think we have all figured out after 15 years or so of doing the same kind of thing, making the same kind of assumptions, that maybe it's more complicated than that.
Right.
Maybe it's a lot more complicated than that. So I started, okay, so I don't want to talk too much. Interrupt me whenever you need to.
No, I want to hear this. Go ahead.
So I had a complete spiritual breakdown in 2017, and part of the reason was, a big part of the reason was I started reading physics books meant for lay people, non-specialists in the field. And I read this one guy, Julian Barbour, Barbour, and he talked about the fact that there is no time for any of the equations in physics that we base our assumptions about reality on. That time is not a factor. In other words, he introduced me to this concept of the black universe and eternalism. And I'm like, okay, well, what is this? And he talked about how reality is a series of slices in space, and things are linked, but there's no time. So, for example, it's basically like a four-dimensional block where nothing is moving through time. All you have are points in space. That's it. Mm-hmm. So why do we think time is moving? Well, we think it's moving because our brains are designed to trick us into believing that there's a past and a present and a future, and we're moving along this timeline from the past to the present to the future. And that's the only way we can survive. Mm-hmm. How could we survive if we perceived everything happening at once?
Right.
How could we couldn't. We have to filter reality down to the absolute basics of getting through the day, surviving in a hostile environment, right? So our brains trick us into believing that we're moving through time, when physics is telling us that's an illusion of the brain, created by the brain. There is no time passing in reality. So from there, I started to just fall apart, because I started to have these moments where I could perceive how this was true. Now, if you go into deep meditation, or you have a religious experience, or you alter your consciousness in some way, it becomes clear that time isn't there. Mm-hmm. We can access those states of no time. It's just you can't live there. So then I started thinking, all right, well, how does this apply to my life? And what does it mean about death? And what does it mean for these investigations that we've all been doing? You take out time, and you've taken away all of our basic assumptions about what's happening in these buildings and in these homes. Mm-hmm. And before I go on, it gets so weird, it gets so trippy, that I'm just going to have to take it really slowly and answer questions. So
no, and this is like you said, and here's the thing, like I've been doing a lot of research on other aspects, which also included physics. And they always talk about there's no concept of time or there is no time. And that's what Einstein, so you go back to his theories and then you start putting all the pieces together. And then it's like, oh my God, all of this, what we've experienced and what we've talked about, all makes sense. So there is an investigation that I've done, and I wanted to bring this up. This is how I started thinking about this. There was an investigation I did several years ago, which was a family suffered an event. Nobody passed. It was a fire in a home. Those two girls upstairs, they were trapped in the room. So the dad ran up the stairs. He said, I'm risking it. My daughters are, they're trying to get him to go out the window. They wouldn't do it. So he ran up the stairs to grab one of the girls, tried to get the other one to come with him. And he can only carry one. So he ran down with the other one, ran up, grabbed the other daughter, ran down. Nobody died. Nobody passed in that event. Years later, um, they rebuilt the home. Well, they rebuilt the home. Years later, they sold the home. And the current owners were experiencing screams. They were experiencing somebody running up the stairs, not all at the same time. It was different time frames. Then they would see somebody running down the stairs. They would just smell smoke. They would smell just or experience different pieces of that event. And they were like, we got ghosts. And did some investigating, did some background. I said, wait a minute, there was a fire here. So I actually was able to contact the original owners and brought them in, and we all discussed the information. And he was like, well, we were living in the house. I would see myself running down the stairs, running up the stairs, my daughter screaming. We would suffer that event. So that's why we sold the house and we had to get out.
Wow. That kind of proves the point. I mean, that proves the theory, because that event is happening now, just as everything is happening right now. This is the hard part to wrap your brain around. Everything that's ever happened to you is happening now. Now, so that event is continuously happening, right?
Right.
It never forms part of the past, because there's no past. It's now, right? Now, because my theory on this is that the reason that they were experiencing it is because the trauma itself allowed some kind of access to that part of the timeline.
Right.
And that is the kind of alteration of consciousness I'm talking about, where you can jump out of your normal everyday awareness and be in a different reality, even in a different reality where you were the one having the trauma.
Right.
And I have lots of stories about this too. And unfortunately, so many of my stories I'm not allowed to tell. But I can say one thing for sure, that a very close friend of mine is absolutely convinced that she haunts a place where something horrible happened to her. And there was some corroboration of that she had been seen. And there's a very famous, I think it was Frederick Myers who wrote this, about apparitions of the living, where you don't have to be dead to be a ghost.
Right.
You can haunt yourself. You can haunt properties. I mean, God knows how many places I'm haunting right now. I wouldn't know, right? So yes, absolutely. That's a great story, and it illustrates this point.
Well, there was another. I'm just gonna say there was a. We were at a location, and it was really strange. Me and another person. It was during an event, and it was actually like it was a production. It was a haunted production. All the lights were out, and the funny thing is, I got a few of us. We all got like kind of confused and disoriented, and I started walking towards the door, and I saw myself walk out the door.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, no way. I
Wow.
just saw myself walking out the door. And somebody, I turned around And I walked out, and two people said, Rob, I just saw you walk out that door. And they said, how did you get back so fast?
Well, see, this is where it starts to get very strange because if you think at every moment of your life is still there and is still happening, right? You know, what happens is that our brain is really good at keeping things in a proper order, right? It's really good at keeping this illusion of time moving forward in going, right? But there are times when it just breaks down. And I think it breaks down more often than we think because that's why we have the world of the paranormal, right? That's why you have deja vu, where you know you've been someplace before and you just simply can't understand. Like, how do I know? This happened to me in Spain. Went to a place I had never been in my life, and I knew exactly what was around every corner. I knew exactly which buildings I was going to see. I knew before I walked someplace, I knew what I was going to see. And it
Mhm.
was incredibly familiar, and yet I had, quote unquote, never been there. I believe that this whole thing is about, okay, you have been there, but it's in your future, right? So you're seeing it as I'm remembering something. You're not. You slipped into something that you would consider your future. It explains this whole concept of no time and the black universe. I think it explains the what we're picking up in paranormal investigations. I think it explains a lot of our EVP and a lot of our interactions. It explains pretty much all of the paranormal phenomena that I can think of. And that's what I think this so-called ghost hunting world has needed. It's needed some kind of theory backed by science or backed by physics that would explain like how this can happen. How can these things happen?
Right.
So yeah.
And no, and that's what I was kind of explaining and kind of talking about this a little bit, but and it's like what gave me the time and I think energy to kind of think about, kind of reflect, like I was saying, was COVID. Um,
Yeah.
I couldn't really do anything. I was stuck. I kind of hit a wall and I started going through a lot and I started reflecting back on everything. And here's the funny thing, the house that I live in was very, very active for a long time.
Mm.
After everything, I guess, after I did this whole, I guess, soul search, I'm going to call it, because basically that's what I did. But it was within my realm of the paranormal. Um, I used to have a lot of different experiences. Um, and there was a lot of activity. After that happened, it all stopped.
Oh, wow.
It all stopped. I have not had any more experiences. Nobody else in the house has had any other experiences, and people are like, "Did you do something?" I was like, "No." But how much of that activity was caused by me? I don't know.
Yeah, see, that's the other strange thing. I've had people ask me this question, like, am I responsible for what I'm picking up on in these investigations? Am I creating this somehow? And I think about it and I think, no, but I think when you're on a paranormal investigation, you get into a different state of mind.
Mhm.
And I think when you're in a different state of mind, I think you're able to start to access these timelines in different ways, not just your own timeline, but somebody else's, right? So you can move in and out of people's lives that live there. You can move in and out of your own timeline, and you can enter into a relationship with something, um, but you don't know when, at what point in history you're entering into that relationship. So at a very famous place that I'm not supposed to go to, we kept running into the 1970s, right? It was coming up over and over again, but it was the 1970s is happening right now, right at that moment.
Mhm.
Um, and I kept wondering, like, how am I appearing for this person?
Right.
Am I some strange nurse that they'd never met before walking into the room asking weird questions? Like, how do I appear to them? So Yes, this opened up a lot. I'm glad you mentioned COVID because I think the pandemic created this weird scenario where we all were kind of locked away, had way too much time on our hands, had a lot of time to think and read and research, right? And I think maybe ultimately it, the pandemic was a good thing for those of us who needed answers and who needed to break out of the boxes that we were in. Because for one thing, I think a lot of us figured out this issue around death. Okay, so
Mhm.
this is gonna sound really controversial, but if there's no time, you are both alive and dead right now.
Right.
It's not that you're going to die somewhere down the line, this is what we all believe, but that you're already in a state of death and life at the same time. So how in the world are you going to die if you're really already dead in some sense?
Yeah, it's really strange. Um, and the funny thing is like you talked about what you just said, and immediately what came to mind was the blog you posted today.
Oh,
I'm like,
yeah.
but it's so true. So, with everything that we've done in our past, a lot of the things for those of us that were into a lot of dark things in the past, I mean, dark music, whatever, we all did that for a reason, and it's so funny because a lot of people that had those type of childhoods or were in that type of things, now I see in the paranormal, and it's like totally made sense. I'll
Yeah.
post, I'll put a link to the article or the blog that she wrote on our webpage.
It's
Yeah.
another controversial topic because a lot of people push back when I write stuff like that, and they're like, "Well, I'm not traumatized and I'm a paranormal." It's like, I'm not saying every paranormal investigator is carrying around trauma, but I do think that there is a certain obsession with darkness and death and misery and suffering and all of that. And I also think that when you think about the fact that we're living all these realities at once, maybe we don't have to be so obsessed with death and decay and suffering, and we could start just enjoying our lives because I believe our lives are always happening.
Uh-huh.
I think there's so much fear around, oh, this is all going to end, and I'm going to have this miserable death experience. I'm going to suffer. I am suffering. I've suffered my whole life, and it's going to end in nothingness. I'm like, well, what if it doesn't? You
Right.
know, what if it doesn't? What if it's all essentially a lot better than you think, right? And anyway, there's a lot to talk about on that topic too, because I think we have to be
Yeah.
more careful than we are about the places that we go and what we invite into our life and all that, because we are entering into people's realities who were very bad people a lot of the times, or they
Right.
were very sick people. And if you occupy someone's reality who is suffering to that level, or who is violent, or who is angry, you're really impacting the quality of your life.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, that too. I mean, I got into the field because of all the experiences that I had as a kid,
Mm.
with the
Me too.
paranormal. So that's what got me, infatuated with it at a young age. And then I just kept on doing it. But yeah, it's just, and then because we're all looking for answers. I mean, that's how we start. And then now, once we do that, and then it's like, okay, you kind of get some relief, and then you just keep them going. And then eventually, like what's happened, I just stopped. I just haven't done anything.
But
It's
I
been
think there's a
years.
reason for that. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, no, no. Go ahead.
I just think so many of us quit around the same time. And I think this is an interesting thing to think about. Like, I know so many people who stopped investigating around the same time and who took years off of it. And I've wondered about that for a long time. Like, why did so many people have that experience? I think, in part at least, is we stopped understanding why we were doing it. Because when you start out, right, what's your main goal? Your goal is, well, is there anything to this? Am I going to get anything? Am I going to capture anything? And then you do. The shock of it is that you actually do come into communication with something else. But then a lot of us didn't know where to go after that. Like once you've done that and you've established that it's possible to communicate with something, someone, like what's next, right? So I think a lot of us realized, okay, this is real, but it also affected us emotionally
Mhm.
um, very severely. It impacted us, I think, in part because of the places we were going and the people we were interacting with.
Right.
So what do you do with that, right? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this, God, probably, I don't know, at least 5, 6 years ago, maybe. Um, it's like we're having a conversation and it's like, okay, I have all this evidence. What do I do with it? Do I write a book?
yeah.
Do I do this? Do I do that? What next? And then I said, what I'm doing is, yeah, I have, so many videos and so much evidence. I mean, I have so many videos of apparitions and things, and a lot of people, thought it was fake because it was so good. It was too good to be true. And then they're like, "What are you going to do with it?" And I'm like, "I just archive it. It's for my personal, archives. It's for my experiences. Now, what I'm doing is I just try to educate people. That's the only thing that I do. Now I don't really investigate much, or I haven't. I think the last investigation that I did was back in 2020 with Rob.
Oh, wow. Well,
Yeah.
see, okay. Well, there's a couple of things I want to say about this. I think, first of all, I used to write about this all the time. This was something that really bothered me. And it was the same time that it was bothering you, that we had all these amazing EVP. We had videos and photos, and nobody cared at all. I couldn't get anyone to listen to the EVP clips. Literally, nobody wanted to listen to them. They just didn't, they weren't there. So it didn't have any meaning to them. And everything can be faked. I could fake my EVPs and fake my photos and fake my videos. Like, not that I ever did, not that I ever would, but nobody took what we were posting seriously, and to the point where they just weren't listening or looking at any of it. And I
Yeah.
was so frustrated. Oh my God. I don't know how many times I tried to like reveal all of this to people and there was no interest in it. So I'm like, well, I don't know why I'm doing this. I don't know what the point is.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, go ahead.
So Well, that's a whole nother issue because it's now with technology the way it is, there's absolutely nothing that can't be faked, right? And you
Right.
can't convince people who weren't on your investigation that this is real. This is something that, I didn't use a filter. It wasn't my stomach. I got to the point where I was just literally yelling at people.
Right.
I'm not an idiot. I know what I saw and I captured it, right? So that created all this misery. But what I wanted to say really quickly is that I think it's time to get back into it
Right.
because I think we all took enough time off and we've done our thinking and we've done our pondering, we've done our soul searching. I think there are new directions that these investigations could go in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with everything that you said, and not to brag, and trust me, Kirsten's been on Ghost Adventures. We both had the opportunity back in the day when Linda Vista was still around. That was episode that Kirsten was on, was the Ghost Adventures at um, Linda Vista.
Mm.
Zach used to have Zach and um, oh
Aaron?
my gosh. Well, they used to have, remember when they had the stew cons at
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Vista? That
Yeah.
was back before Ghost Adventures was even on the air.
Yeah.
Before Zach and Aaron created Ghost Adventures. Um, and then shortly after that, that's when they started Ghost Adventures. But we and Zach was always at Linda Vista.
Yes, he was.
So we got to know Zach way before he even started Ghost Adventures. And then we luckily, I mean, we were on a couple of his shows, both Kirsten and I. So that we have a a huge. I don't know. We have a lot of history with Linda Vista, and going to. Speaking of which, I'm to bring up a location. So you just went to the Queen Mary,
Yes, that was awesome.
and I know that you love that location. I love the location. Um, so how was it?
Oh my gosh, it was so amazing. I mean, I hadn't been on the Queen Mary since 2018, I think. And if people don't know, I got married on the Queen Mary in 2004 on Halloween, of course. And when I went back on the ship, I was expecting it to look a little bit like it did before. I was expecting it to look in bad shape, and it wasn't. It was actually the city of Long Beach did amazing things. They got a huge grant and they actually put it towards the ship, and the ship looks incredible. So I was in tears. I couldn't believe how beautiful it was. They had the captain of the ship standing by the piano, and people were drinking champagne, and I was just, bawling.
Mhm.
So the investigation, which I didn't have high hopes for. So I'll be honest, I went into it thinking this is probably going to be one of those investigations that me and the girls are going to be rolling our eyes at. But it was really good. It was really good. So I want to give a shout out to the Gray Ghost Tours Paranormal Investigation. I think it's called Gray Ghost Project, actually, and run by Rebecca. Um, it was a very well done investigation. It was mostly the Estes method, where they've got the blindfold and
Right.
all that. And we all participated in that except for me, because I was terrified to channel anything that night. I was feeling vulnerable, so I didn't do it. But Kimberly did it, Jen did it, and Aaron did it. And the results were absolutely astounding. I mean, I really was shocked at how good the contact was that night. And I didn't expect that. And it left me with these moments of, if you remember, like when we started this, you get these goosebumps, you get this like whole body chills when something like this happens.
Right.
And that happened again. And then it kind of recharged me. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, there was a reason that we did this. There was a reason, and there was a reason we felt the way we did. Um, and we got to do this again. We have to do more of this. We have to go back out there, take what we've learned, take our experiences, take our new theories, and keep at it, because I still think it's important work. And I know why we quit for a while, but I still think it's important.
Yeah.
So,
No, and it's I wanted to bring something else up. Like during the time when, like I was saying, a lot of the ghost shows were barely taking off at that time, and we had, like you said, so much evidence, and nobody really wanted to see it. There's only a couple of production companies that would even give you the time of day, and that was, My Ghost Story,
yes. Oh, yes.
or or you know, or Zach. I mean, Zach would hear
Yeah.
about your stuff. He would say, "Hey, send me a copy of this." Actually, he wouldn't. It would be somebody else from his team. At that time, God, he had so many people working for him that are also on shows. But anyway, so you would always get a call from somebody, and they would say, "Hey, we want to set up a, a telephone call with you," and then you would get interviewed, and then they would set up a time. Then you'd show up and get interviewed by Zach. but and they'll go over your evidence. But I mean, but other than that, other TV shows would come over and call you or hear about it, and then they were like, "This, yeah." It was always a joke.
Yeah, it was a joke. I have a horrible story about this. Um, we have been off and on under contract with a
with a
studio
studio
for
for
years.
years.
All
Yeah,
right, we've been quote unquote in production. Paranormal Housewives has been in production for a long time. But we had one particularly terrible experience when a producer wanted a great ghost clip, right? And so Jen sent one of the best EVPs we have ever gotten. And it was something along the line of two people talking at the Glen Tavern Inn. And one of them says, "Are we ghosts?" Right? And it's very clear. Are we ghosts? And we were like completely floored. We're like, this is the best thing ever. So we sent it, Jen sent it off to the producer. And I had done this myself too. I sent the same person some of my best stuff, and I'm all proud and excited. She lost her mind. She was so angry. She's like, "This isn't loud enough. It needs to be a lot louder, and they need to say it a lot more clearly, and they need to say it like with more space in between." She just ripped apart the EVPs because they weren't good enough. They weren't dramatic enough. And she's like, "We can't use this. We can't use this." And she screamed at both of us for our substandard, for our inferior EVP, because they weren't saying what she wanted them to say, and they weren't saying it loud enough, and they weren't enunciating. I was
right.
like, "You got to be kidding me. I can't direct these I can't direct ghosts to speak more clearly and to say what you want." Right? Um, and that happened all the time. It was never enough. And they basically, what they were saying is, fake the damn EVP. I don't care. Right? That's what they wanted. I wouldn't do it. And this is probably why we're still in production. So,
Yeah. Were you in? Because I was contacted, and I think you guys were going to be part of it too. From Julia Roberts.
oh, shit. Yes.
I was contacted by her publicist, and she was going to do a new show. She's and her and her publicist were supposed to come out and meet me at Linda or Lincoln Heights Jail. They wanted a tour, and at that time, I was facilitating that location. And then they brought up, I think it was your name or Aaron. They said, "So you know the Paranormal Housewives?" And I said, "Yeah, I do." And then they said, "Oh, because we have a call with them, and they told me in a couple of days or something, but we wanted to come look at the location first." And I said, "Okay." And then it fell through. I don't know. It just fell through. Haven't
Okay,
heard back.
so we were just talking about this. There was another producer on that show that was part of the whole thing. And it was a very strange thing that happened there, because not only did they published in the trades that we were coming out with this show, that Julia Roberts was on board. They put it out there in the press. And they, that doesn't happen in Hollywood unless it's going to happen.
Right.
They were advertising us. They were advertising this show. Julia Roberts was public about being affiliated with the project. It was in the Hollywood Reporter. It was all over the place. So this was one of the most surreal moments of my life. I remember at some point, weeks had gone by and people weren't answering emails, and then months were going by. And I realized, like, wow, that this is not going to happen. And I didn't know why, and nobody knew why. And we were all the people associated with that project were frantically calling whoever they could associated with that show. Like, what's happening? What's going on? And we never got an answer.
Yeah.
That was the roughest time for the Paranormal Housewives, because we had pulled together to do this show, and then there was radio silence, and no one said why. And to this day, we don't know.
Yeah, it was kind of weird because, like I said, I got a phone call and I said, "Okay, let me coordinate with the jail." and then I'll give you a call back. And then I called back, and it was weird. They weren't her publicist wasn't answering her call. So I left a message. Then I got, like, almost immediately, it was weird. I get a voicemail saying that, oh, they couldn't make it. Something else has come up. And then I never heard anything else
I'm
after that.
telling you, like, whatever happened there was so mysterious. It's almost like something they got a piece of information or someone pulled their support for the project, but it was something dramatic because it was out there and it was going to happen, and then that was it, and even a big producer on that show was cut out. Like,
Mm.
so it wasn't just us, it was all these this whole team got cut out. Um, we don't know. Yes, we maybe it was. This is just a hypothesis. This was also the time when the Real Housewives of wherever were very popular, right?
Mhm.
That was a time in television where they wanted us to fight and they wanted us to throw each other under the bus and they wanted us to badmouth each other and to like throw the wine across the room. You know, this is what we were being told that viewers wanted, right? Viewers want to see you miserable. They even tried to like turn my stepdaughter against me in an interview. And I remember thinking, like, if this is what it's going to be, I don't want to do this, right?
Yeah.
So it's possible that they didn't think we were going to provide enough drama and anger and upset, you know, for the show that they wanted to do. And they thought, no, they like each other too much. They're too close, you know. They actually want to investigate and put out their silly little non-dramatic EVPs. Like they're not going to fake evidence, you know. Boring. Let's move on.
Yeah. And I mean, you guys are all so sweet.
Yeah, that's
I
a
can
problem.
see, I know, exactly. Especially Aaron. I would be like, yeah, I can really see Aaron throwing a glass of wine
No,
across
she
the
would laugh the whole time. She would giggle while
exactly,
throwing the
ex
wine. There's no way.
exactly. It won't work.
It doesn't work. Yeah.
No, it's so funny just on all the things that it's so crazy.
I don't know. Do you think that maybe it's a different moment for Ghost TV, or is it the same old, same old?
Honestly, I think now with with everybody going online and doing everything, I just think that production companies, or I think they have a hard time booking shows anymore or getting funds for shows anymore because I don't know. I just think that there's the content, there's so much out there. And I think, I don't know if it's a budget thing. I don't know. It could be that it is budget.
I don't know. I never feel like it's a money issue. I just sometimes I think it's like we need to do something differently. There's too many of the same kinds of show, right? And they're stuck in the formula that we've been stuck in for
But
15 years.
and that's what I'm saying is I think they don't want to risk the budget on that and just create a show. They might have a couple of episodes, they sign for 3 episodes and then nothing happens. I do know somebody that they shot 3 episodes. I still haven't seen anything done. And her boyfriend is a producer in Hollywood. And so I figured, okay, she's going to have his pull, and
Mhm.
he's in the horror industry. And I still haven't seen anything. She did a sizzle reel and filmed 3 episodes, and I haven't seen any of it.
God, you know, it's like, what happens to this stuff? We have a sizzle reel on Vimeo. If you guys are bored, you can put the Paranormal Housewives into Vimeo and watch our sizzle reel from 2011. And you can see what they were like trying to do with us. But you know, what
Yeah,
happens to this stuff?
I thought you guys had something else going as of like 2019,
Yes.
maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, and we of course, we can't talk about it, blah, blah,
Right.
blah,
No, it's fine.
and but, basically what it is, in speaking in really general terms, is that it's a scripted show based on our lives where we would be, they would have the rights to use the name, our team name, and then the rights to our stories to develop them for a scripted show. Um, but again, there was the writer's strike, there was the actor's strike, there was all of these interruptions, and they weren't I was like, "I have to be careful." They weren't really happy with the writers, and so
Mm.
they kept replacing writers and replacing them and firing them and replacing them. So I still don't know, exactly what's going on, but that's a very familiar feeling at this point.
Yeah, I mean, well, you have to remember, I'm not gonna say the name of the show, but I took a producer of a very, very well-known ghost show.
Mhm.
Um, I did a tour of Glen Tavern for them,
Yeah.
and she wanted to surprise her boyfriend, and I said, "Okay, I'll do it." And I said, "But why are you calling me?" She said, "I want a real investigator." And I said, "But you host or you produce, one of the biggest ghost shows in the industry right now." And she said, "Rob," she said, "we'll talk later."
Oh, dear.
Actually, and she gave me a script.
She gave you a script?
She gave me a script. She said, "Here, I have something for you."
But did you have to use the
I
script?
didn't. No, 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 no. This was for her company. She handed me one of the show's scripts.
Oh, one of the show's script. Oh god.
And then I
That's
said, "Oh, so then we talked about it. So this is scripted?" And she said, "I told you. Why do you think I want a real investigator?"
oh, now I really want okay, so you gotta tell me which show is scripted because
I'll
that's
tell you off, Colin.
yeah, privately, because that's so upsetting. I mean, I watch these shows, I'm not gonna lie, I watch them, they're entertaining, but I want to believe that at least some of it is real. I don't wanna think that the whole thing is one big setup fake, you know? I just can't. That would make me really sad, but I
Right.
wouldn't be surprised, you know?
Yeah.
Um, interesting. Yeah.
No, it's just kind of funny just how productions work. And you have to understand it's for entertainment.
That's true, but I also thought, like, my idea was, why can't it be educational and entertaining and interesting at the same time? You know, why can't a real investigation be fascinating in its own right? Like, why does it I think whoever is making the big decisions for these shows, and I don't know who these people are because 'cause they're shadowy and they hang out in the background, right? We never meet the bigwigs. We meet all the intermediary people. But the people who are behind this stuff, um, I don't think they're comfortable with the topic in some sense. And I think they don't understand it. And I think they try to make it into something it isn't, and they try to turn it into a dramatic show. And that is really not the intention. Um, yeah, I don't know.
I think I think as as a show goes on for seasons, I think eventually once the ratings start dropping, they have to change it up.
yeah. I know
Like,
that's happened with some shows I know very well.
yeah, and that's when they started, doing all the scripts. I got the whole history of the backline. I mean, of everything, of all the backstories. I was like, oh, okay, so that's why that happened, you know. And no, it's not the show we were talking about earlier. So
That's so depressing. And
it
here's the
didn't
thing,
have anything
like
to do with Zach. So just
what? I'm sorry?
it didn't have anything to do with Zach.
Well, we all have to say that now because we're afraid he'll send out
Well,
hitmen.
no, because the reason why a lot of people aren't outspoken about it is because they signed an NDA.
I
I
haven't
didn't
signed anything.
I didn't sign an NDA when this producer gave me the script.
That's the thing. It's like I've never signed an NDA. Well, nope, that's not true. Yes, I have. But my point is that there's also a lot of fear now around talking about the paranormal entertainment industry because of the personalities involved and the ugliness that seems to be out there and the competition and
Yeah.
that's why at the end of the day, if I don't ever show up on TV again, that's fine. Because to be honest, it's much more fulfilling to me to have these conversations, to write in my blog and to answer readers' questions. It's much more important to me to be on kind of the education side of it
Yeah, it is.
than it is to be on the entertainment side of it. The entertainment side of it depressed me, and I had one of the worst years of my life when we were the closest to success and the closest, and like we were literally, at we were at Oprah's studio, which at the time was, God, I blocked it. I don't even remember the name of her studio right now. But we were like interviewing with Oprah's team, and we were like really close, right? But interestingly enough, that was like one of the worst years of my life because I was always having to ask myself, what am I willing to give up for this?
Yeah.
And how much am I willing to compromise my integrity and to compromise my beliefs and to hurt my family in order to do this? And then I realized I'm not willing. I'm not going to ruin my friendships with the girls. I'm not going to hurt my family relationships. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to fake. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to dramatize something for TV. And I think ultimately that cost me the opportunity to have a show. But hey, that's okay. I'm okay.
Yeah. No, you know, and it's funny because back in the day, you would get call. I mean, there was calls coming in a lot. Um, I would get calls. Hey, I'm looking for a location. Where would you suggest? I'd give them a list,
Mm-hmm.
and then they were like, "Can you get us in this one location?" But I was like, I'm like, I can't even get in there. And I said, for the amount of money that they want for, an 8-hour investigation, I said, you're going to have a huge budget
Yes.
because this location, I said, you can't get in there for anything less than 16 grand for 8 hours. And then they were like, what? And I said, yeah, good luck. And they were like, well, we need it for like 4 days. And I said, good luck.
Pay
They
up.
called, they called and they were like, dude, you weren't lying. And I said, I told you.
I don't like it when, we get these phone calls where all they want is they want to mine us for information or they want a location from us. I'm like, no, I'm not just going to hand that to you.
Right.
That's not cool. And I'm not, they called me in Granada. So I'm in Spain and it's October 29th, of course, right?
Right.
And I get a call from someone I'd worked with before, and she's like, "Oh, you need to help me. We have a segment we need to fill, and I need a location, and I need you to get me in for a location." And I'm like, I was so disgusted at this point. I said, "Hey, why don't you just come to Spain? I'll get you into the Alhambra. It's this, 11th century fortress. I'm sure they wouldn't mind. Nah, we'll just pay off the Catholic Church. Not a problem." It's just, I was so angry because it's like the interest in us spikes in October, but
Mhm.
it's not interest in us. It's
Right.
interest in, I want a cool location and I want you guys to come along, but it's really going to be about me and blah, blah, blah. It's just like, okay. Yeah, it gets tiresome after a while.
It
There's
is.
more to us than that.
Exactly. We're not just pimps.
Yes. Well, I mean,
Pimps and
for
hoes,
at least pay me. Like, yeah, if you're going to do that, pay me.
right? No, it's just funny. But yeah, we'll go out on an investigation. Like I said earlier off camera with that, I'm gonna go scout a location that we haven't been to in a while. I was there, you know, I don't know, few probably a couple of months ago. I just drove by, but they're doing some building. Um, so I'll go scout it out this weekend and let you know.
Please, because I should scout it out myself, but to be honest, it's like I'm afraid to scout it out myself, and I want to send someone who's not. It's like,
Well, Kimberly and I have done it. So
oh
I'll
yeah, she'll
I'll
go anywhere, that girl.
I'll call her up and say, "Hey, meet me over. I'll come to your house and we'll walk over."
Oh, she would love that. I would love that. You know what? If you guys do that, just let me know. I'll go too. I'll make the
Okay.
drive
I
because
will. I'll go scout it this weekend, then I'll let you know.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait because 'cause I'm back into it again. Like, I'm up for it now. I'm ready. So let's get the troops together.
Yeah, I have to. Yeah, because I'm gonna have epidural next week, so
Oh,
it's
ouch.
an epidural. So
I'm sorry.
um, I'll go scout it out this weekend, and then we'll go. We'll see what's up.
Okay, everybody get healthy so we can get back out into the world, you know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was great chatting with you. I'm gonna end the show.
Okay.
But no, it was awesome talking to you, and I will reach out to you this weekend and tell Ty I said hello and thanks for coming
Well,
on. It was so much fun.
thank you. I really enjoyed this, and I hope we get to do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, we will.
Okay.
All right. See ya.
Bye, everybody.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for watching. It was a fun show. Um, hope everybody has a great weekend. It's my birthday weekend, so don't know what I'm doing yet, but anyway. All right. Well, I'm going to call it and have a great weekend. And I'll see you guys maybe Saturday. All right.